Welcome to the Estate Planning Minute. I'm Michael Glassford. I love explaining complicated legal processes through movies that we know and love. In today's video, I'm going to use Project Hail Mary as an example to talk about some of these basic principles that will allow you to start making your own plan, start making some decisions, and start formulating an idea of how to take next steps. In Project Hail Mary, the first major problem isn't actually survival, it's confusion. The main character wakes up with no memory, no context, no instructions, no understanding of what matters, no idea what decisions have already been made. And what's fascinating is that the danger becomes worse because information is missing. That part feels fictional until you watch it happen to real families. I've seen families go through their own version of this over and over again. Someone dies unexpectedly, or maybe they don't die. Maybe they become incapacitated. Stroke, accident, dementia, medical emergency. And suddenly the people left behind realize one terrifying thing. One person was carrying the entire operating system of the family. They knew the passwords, the accounts, the insurance information, the tax preparer, the business systems, the mortgage details, the investment strategy, the contacts, the bills, and the plan. And nobody else does. That's when families discover that the real crisis isn't always financial, it's informational. People think estate planning is about documents, but at its core, estate planning is organized communication. It's building a system that answers critical questions before there's a crisis. Good estate planning creates clarity, not just for courts, not just for lawyers, but families. Because grief already creates emotional chaos. You do not want logistical chaos on top of it. I once heard about a family where the husband handled everything financially. Good guy, successful business owner, loved his family. But he died unexpectedly, and within days, payroll was frozen, automatic payments started bouncing, nobody could access critical accounts. His wife didn't know which bank held operating funds. Vendors started calling, employees started panicking, not because there wasn't money, but because there wasn't a system to access the money. Money without organization can become inaccessible surprisingly fast. This is why good estate planning includes more than a will. It includes powers of attorney, successor trustees, healthcare directives, asset inventories, beneficiary coordination, emergency instructions, digital access planning. A real plan answers questions before somebody is forced to ask them in a hospital waiting room. And honestly, one of the greatest gifts you can leave your family is not wealth, it's reducing uncertainty. It's allowing the people you love to focus on each other instead of trying to reconstruct your entire life from scattered clues. In Project Hail Mary, survival depended on recovering information quickly. In real life, families often don't get that luxury, which is why the best time to organize your life is before someone else has to. One of the most realistic parts of Project Hail Mary is the assumption that systems will fail. In space missions, redundancy is everything. There are backups for navigation, backups for communication, backups for life support, backups for backups. Because when failure happens in a high stakes environment, there may not be time to improvise. Now compare that to how most people run their actual lives. Most families have built a system with exactly one point of failure. One person knows the finances, the passwords, the investments, the insurance, the business operations, the tax information, the legal documents. That's normal. One person carrying everything. And everybody else is just trusting that person will always be there tomorrow. That is not a plan. That's vulnerability. Estate planning is really contingency planning. It's asking if I suddenly disappeared, would the system continue functioning? And for a lot of people, the honest answer is no. I've seen situations where a business owner becomes incapacitated unexpectedly. The company is profitable, clients are paying, work is lined up, But suddenly, nobody can access payroll, contracts can't be signed, vendors stop getting responses, employees don't know who actually has authority, banks refuse access, family members are locked out, not because the business failed, but because the backup system failed. This is why estate planning documents matter so much. A properly designed plan creates replacement decision makers before there's an emergency. A good plan asks who steps in if you can't act, who manages money, who runs the business, who makes medical decisions, who takes care of the children, who has the legal authority, who knows where everything is. That's why we use successor trustees, powers of attorney, healthcare agents, guardians, business succession planning, buy-sell agreements, emergency instruction systems. These aren't just legal tools, they're continuity tools. The people you love should never be forced to guess what you would have wanted. And they definitely shouldn't have to fight through courts, banks, or each other while trying to figure it out. In the movie, survival depends on systems that could continue functioning under extreme conditions. Real life isn't space, but emergencies still happen. Accidents, illness, dementia, lawsuits, unexpected death. And when they happen, families either discover there's a system or they discover there isn't one. Good estate plans assume humans are mortal. Bad estate plans assume tomorrow is guaranteed. If you want a simple test for whether your life has a backup system, ask yourself this. If you disappeared for 90 days starting tonight, could someone access the bills? Could payroll continue? Could your spouse manage the accounts? Could someone make medical decisions? Could your family locate your documents? Would your business survive? Would your children be protected? Most people have never actually tested their system. And sometimes the people carrying the most responsibility are the least replaceable because they never planned to be replaced. One of the most important themes in Project Hail Mary is urgency. There are certain problems in the story that become irreversible if action is delayed too long. And estate planning works the exact same way. Because the tragedy is not usually that people never intended to plan. The tragedy is that they assumed they had more time. We're going to wait to do it next year. That sentence shows up constantly after crisis. We were going to update the will. We were going to create the trust. We were going to name the guardians. We were going to organize the accounts. We were going to handle the business succession plan. And then something happened first. Most estate planning disasters are not caused by bad intentions. They're caused by delay. People delay planning for a lot of understandable reasons. They're busy. They feel overwhelmed. They think estate planning is only for wealthy people. They don't want to think about death. They assume they're too young. They think nothing bad will happen yet. But incapacity doesn't care about your schedule. Accidents don't wait for retirement. And courts don't pause because your family wasn't emotionally ready. The risk is not dying someday. The risk is becoming unavailable unexpectedly. And honestly, incapacity is often the bigger issue because when someone dies, there's at least a legal process. When someone is alive but unable to act, that's where families can become trapped. If there's no power of attorney, accounts can become inaccessible, decisions can get delayed, courts may need to appoint guardians or conservators, family members may fight over authority, businesses can stall, medical decisions can become harder, if not impossible, and all of this happens while people are emotionally exhausted. I heard about a family where the father had a major medical event unexpectedly. He survived, but he could no longer manage finances or communicate clearly. The problem? There was no power of attorney, no trust, no organized system. So while the family was trying to help him medically, they were also trying to navigate the court procedures just to gain authority to manage basic financial matters. That's an incredibly expensive time to discover missing documents. And then there's probate, which most people misunderstand completely. Probate is not automatically evil, but probate is a public, court supervised process. And when there's poor planning, probate often becomes slower, more expensive, more stressful, more conflict heavy. especially if documents are outdated, beneficiaries are unclear, assets weren't coordinated, family relationships are strained, businesses are involved, or minor children are involved. Good intentions do not override poor preparation. And one of the saddest things about estate conflicts is this: most families are not fighting because they're greedy, they're fighting because uncertainty creates fear. Confusion always creates conflict. When people don't know what you wanted, what's fair, who has authority, what the plan was, they start filling in the gaps emotionally. That's when relationships break down. In Project Hail Mary, preparation determined survival. The mission only had a chance because systems were built before the crisis started. That's the entire point of estate planning. You cannot build a parachute while you're already falling. So if someone watching this has been delaying planning, here's the reality. You don't need a perfect plan tomorrow, but you do need movement because partial preparation is usually better than none. Start with a basic will, power of attorney, healthcare directive, guardians for children, beneficiary reviews, account organization, document inventory. The goal isn't perfection, the goal is reducing chaos. And the people who suffer the most after a crisis are usually not the people who loved each other the least. They're the people who postponed hard conversations the longest. By the end of Project Hail Mary, one of the biggest emotional themes is sacrifice. Not sacrifice for recognition, not sacrifice for status, sacrifice for other people. And that's where estate planning becomes deeply misunderstood. Because most people think estate planning is about money. But the longer I do this, the more I know that estate planning is really about emotional infrastructure. The best estate plans do something incredibly valuable. They transfer clarity during emotionally devastating moments. Because when families lose someone, their emotional bandwidth disappears fast. Simple decisions suddenly feel overwhelming. People are grieving, sleeping poorly, emotionally exhausted. And in the middle of that, they're expected to handle banks, manage legal decisions, coordinate property, deal with insurance, navigate courts, make medical choices, and manage family dynamics. That's a brutal environment to force people to make complicated decisions without guidance. A good estate plan creates emotional stability during unstable moments, not because it removes grief, but because it removes unnecessary uncertainty. Questions like, what did they want? Who's in charge? What happens next? Are we doing the right thing? When those questions are already answered, families can focus on healing instead of guessing. I once heard of someone describing their final parents' estate plan after a death. Not just the legal documents, but organized instructions, letters, contacts, account information, funeral wishes, a personal message to the family. And they said something incredibly powerful. It felt like they were still helping us. That's legacy. Legacy is not just transferring assets. Legacy is transferring care. It's creating a final act of protection for the people you love. Sometimes the greatest inheritance is clarity. And that is why some of the most valuable estate planning tools aren't even technically required by law. Things like instruction letters, ethical wills, family guidance documents, business continuity notes, password systems, video messages, explanations behind decisions. Those things reduce emotional confusion. Because one of the hardest parts of a loss is uncertainty. Uncertainty about whether you're honoring someone correctly, whether you're making the right choices, whether there were wishes you never knew about. A well-designed estate plan can reduce that burden dramatically. And honestly, one of the biggest myths is that family fights are always about greed. A lot of conflicts start because people are hurt, confused, afraid, feeling excluded, feeling uncertain. Clarity prevents suspicion. Communication prevents resentment. When people don't know what decisions were made, they invent explanations, and those explanations can destroy relationships. In Project Hail Mary, survival depended on trust, communication, and shared purpose. Families aren't that different, especially during crisis. If your family had to navigate life without you tomorrow, what would you really want to leave behind? More confusion, more court involvement, more conflict? Or would you want to leave direction, protection, stability, peace, clarity? Those are what a good estate plan really is. Because eventually every family inherits two things: the assets and the emotional conditions surrounding them. So, yes, estate planning can help avoid probate complications, reduce taxes, protect businesses, protect children, and preserve wealth. But underneath all of that, it's really about making one of life's hardest moments slightly less difficult for the people you care about the most. And that may be one of the most human things we ever do for each other. So, after all of this, what does a real life Hail Mary plan actually look like? It's not fear, it's not paranoia, and it's not paperwork. It's a system designed to protect the people you love if life becomes unpredictable. Because here's the reality most people avoid: every family eventually faces disruption. Sometimes it's a death, sometimes it's illness or incapacity or dementia or an accident or a business emergency. The question is not whether life will become unstable at some point. The question is whether your family will have clarity when it does. That's the lesson hidden underneath Project Hail Mary. The people who survive crisis are usually the people who prepared before the crisis arrived. So if something happened to you tonight, would anybody know? Would anyone know where your important documents are, how to access accounts, what bills need paid, who should run the business, what your medical wishes are, who should care for your children, who has legal authority to act? Or would the people you love be forced into confusion during the worst week of their lives? Because that's what estate planning really is. It's creating instructions for the people who may someday have to continue life without you. Clarity is a gift. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to solve everything overnight. Most people think estate planning means building some massive, complicated legal structure immediately. It doesn't. The first step is simply deciding that your family deserves something better. Your family deserves a plan. You can start by creating a basic will, naming guardians for children, setting powers of attorney, organizing account information, reviewing beneficiaries, creating healthcare directives, documenting important contacts, building a secure emergency information system, and reaching out to someone like me that can help you along the way. Perfect planning is not required, intentional planning is. And honestly, one of the greatest acts of love is refusing to leave your family in chaos. Imagine your family sitting down after a crisis and finding organized instructions, important contacts, clear legal authority, guidance, explanations, maybe even a personal letter from you. Not confusion, not panic, a roadmap. That changes everything. In Project Hail Mary, survival depends on preparation, trust, sacrifice, and systems built ahead of time. Real life isn't science fiction, but families still need those same things. So maybe the real question isn't, do I need an estate plan? Maybe the real question is, if the people I love needed my plan tomorrow, would they find one? If you've been putting this off, start the conversation. Even small steps today can prevent enormous pain later. I help you build a plan for your family that reduces confusion, protects children, preserves businesses, and creates clarity during difficult moments. If you're ready to start building your own family continuity plan, reach out to me. After all, estate planning is not about preparing for death, it's about protecting life after disruption. This is why I say it's your life, it's your story. Make it a good one. Do you enjoy these videos? Please like, follow, comment, or subscribe. And for more information, visit legallifeplan.com.